Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman and members of the audience, please remain standing this evening for a couple of moments of silence for Mr. Bob Cannon, Marine Corps veteran, City Councilor, also served in our Woburn School Committee, as well as Trooper Bochi of the Massachusetts State Police. Moment of silence for them, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Okay, would the superintendent please call the roll for the regular meeting of the Woburn School Committee?
Ms. Chisholm.
Here.
Ms. Cormier.
Present.
Ms. Crowley.
Present.
Mr. Kissel.
Here.
Mr. Lipset.
Here.
Mr. Morenin.
Present.
Dr. Wells.
Present. Okay, I just want to remind everybody that this session is being recorded, and by speaking, you're giving your consent to be recorded. Okay, first up, the approval of minutes for 2/17/22.
Motion to approve. Second.
Second, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comment? Not seeing anybody. Okay, so we'll move on.
Yeah, we don't have him on there anymore.
Oh, no, I know. I'm going to do them after the student rep report. And I'll just, before we get there. Okay. And so next up, we have Sophia, the student rep report. Nice to see you. Hi. So what can you tell us about what's happening at Memorial High School?
Alright, so starting on March 4th, Term 3 progress reports are posted to student portals. Then on March 8th, there is a Kennedy Institute field trip in the history department. Ms. Connolly organized and ran this event, which is competitive to attain. Also on March 8th at 6:30, there's a girls basketball tournament game at home, and it's their second round of the state tournament. On March 10th and 11th is the Deca field trip at Boston Copley. Ms. Keenan is the advisor for Deca, and the students are excited to participate at this event. On March 14th and 15th, it is the teacher course recommendations completed for the 2022 to the 2023 school year. On March 16th through the 17th, students complete their course selection forms for the next school year. From March 16th to 17th, there is also a Woburn Theater Company performance that starts at 5 p.m. at Memorial High School and is run and produced by the students. On March 18th, there is the freshman semi-formal dance, which goes from 7 to 10 p.m. On March 21st is the first day of spring sport tryouts. March 22nd to 23rd is ELA MCAS for grade 10. March 21st, the 24th, and the 25th, there are student course selections with guidance counselors. On March 25th is the senior dance from 7 to 10 p.m. On April 1st, it's junior prom from 6 to 10 p.m. and that's off-site. April 8th, term 3 ends. April 8th also, there are senior internships and passion projects begin. On April 14th, term 3 report cards are posted to student and parent portals. On April 15th, there's no school because of Good Friday, and there's also no school from April 18th to the 22nd because of April break. And some big news is juniors Katie Concannon and Megan Quayle were voted as the 2022 SILS recipients. The SILS award is given annually to each Middlesex League principal honoring students for their scholarship, integrity, leadership, and service. The faculty nominates students for this award, and each principal in Middlesex League brings the final nominees forward. And in a typical year, this would be culminate in a luncheon in which all SILS award recipients are honored, but due to the pandemic, the luncheon did not take place last year, but students will be presented with medals from the Middlesex League principals to signify their accomplishment in scholarship, integrity, leadership, and service.
Thank you. Congratulations to the students up there. Do I have any questions from the committee? If not, I was just going to ask, how is it going without mask optional at school?
Yeah, it's actually really nice.
Smile.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad everybody's staying healthy, so. And then the other question the committee wanted to know is, are you interested in coming in person?
We have a seat.
I normally have things like that I can't make it on these days, but if there is a day that I can make it, I would totally come in person.
Okay.
Great.
All right, so, just keep that in mind, and we'll keep in touch, and if you can be in person, we'd love to have you here in person, and
All right.
tell Faith the same thing.
I
Okay.
will.
And no questions? So, all right, thank you, have a good evening.
Thanks, Sophia. Have a good night.
Yep. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to recognize Mr. Viola, a Ward 7 Alderman, and our liaison to the City Council. Thank you for being here tonight. And as always, if you have something you want to present to us, just let me know, and we'll get you up here talking before the committee. Okay. So we're going to move on to reports and presentations of the superintendent and staff. And first up, we're great honor. So,
Yeah, so allow me to introduce Larry Giuseppe, retired, or I think retired, he just told me differently. Veteran affairs. Veteran affairs from the city of Woburn, so.
You wish, Larry.
how would you know the difference?
So we just wanted, again,
Might as well walk.
to welcome you to the school committee and thank you for your many years of service and work with the schools.
It's Larry, I thought maybe what you could do before, just tell us the changes, that you've seen since you've been the veterans agent, because I know you've done a lot of work in the schools and making sure we get
We've,
speakers.
I guess over the past 13 or so years, I've had great involvement with all of the different schools. Each Memorial Day and each Veterans Day, we provide a veteran speaker to any school that is having an assembly that wishes to have one. I've even this past year done 3 or 4 outside. We did one at the Earl Wyman, and then we did one at the with Mr. Wells up at the flagpole project up at Ferrulo Field. So we held those affairs outside. We also have encouraged over the years any of the groups of students, mostly at the younger ages, that wish to participate in the flag, in the parades and hold flags. We've always done them. The other thing, I think this might have been the first year that I didn't receive a phone call. Over the past 10 years, we've always had a number of students calling up looking to interview Vietnam veterans. I think that was part of their history project at the school. I didn't receive any calls this year, so I don't know if they did or didn't do that.
It's a little early. I think it might be this semester, and maybe you stay by the phone.
Okay, I shall,
Yeah.
if I'm not working that day. But this past year, had the opportunity to meet with the Junior Rotarian Club at the high school. They actually did a bake sale and donated the money to veterans in needs in the community. So what we did was we took the money that they gave us, we went over and purchased like gift cards for food at DeMoulas and handed those out to veterans in need. So it's get a lot of support, an extremely good amount of support from the schools, the citizens of Woburn. It's a real blue-collar community. Appreciate it, and I've had, 12 years of great run.
Yep.
Just kind of
Yeah.
time for someone to take over.
Right, and, we wanted just to have you here to thank you for what you brought to the schools, because, as a community, we honor the veterans, and we think having, veterans in the school instills our students with a sense of pride for what a lot of people have done before them, for them. So let other members comment, and I'll start with maybe a fellow veteran, Mr. Mulrennan. Yeah.
I think most of all, I don't know, for the last 2 years, Larry, the superintendent as well, we kept hearing the word pivot. So I know with the Veterans Office, between yourself and the veterans agencies in the city of Woburn, you wanted to honor and commemorate our veterans in the city. And you guys down the office with cooperation of the mayor's office, you kind of pivoted. You did a couple of things on the city hall steps, a limited exposure, but you still kept the true spirit of Woburn, the true spirit of our veterans, and getting the recognition that they so deserve, some way, shape, or form, besides zooming it on a computer. We still got a chance to again, allow the students and allow the young members of our community to learn and know a little bit about what it's like to be a veteran. And as you mentioned before, I've had the opportunity to be with you and myself, Mrs. Chisholm's son, Eddie, who had the opportunity to speak before the kids, and I think that coordination and cooperation between you and the school department, 12 years has flown. I know you've done a ton of work in 12 years up there. Your list could probably go on and on and on. And I know earlier this evening you talked to Dr. Wells about your attention to detail with just the veterans at the Veterans Home over there in Bedford. So it's not just Woburn that you're serving a bigger and broader community than Woburn. And I know, speaking here as a Marine Corps veteran and a friend, I wish you the best of luck. I hope your golf game improves and enjoy
It
your
can only go
grandchildren.
up, Mike.
It can only go up. And enjoy your grandchildren out there in the next chapter.
Thanks.
So, thanks for all you've done.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Any other members have anything?
Well, I
Ms.
just
Chisholm?
have one question about the volunteering for kids to put flags on for Memorial Day.
Yes.
You want to put on-
So we decorate all of the graves of veterans in the city of Woburn on Memorial Day. We just do it, we don't do it Veterans Day, just Memorial Day. We put out about 7,800 flags. The bulk of those, of course, are Calvary and Woodbrook. We do all of Woodbrook, and the Woburn people, we do all of Calvary, even though half of it is in Winchester. People of Winchester kind of don't want any part of it. We also do the first and second burial grounds, which is Montvale Ave and behind the old Royal Furniture at the intersection of Center and Park Street. And what I've done in the past is, for any student that has ever come over and volunteered, we always do it on the Friday or Saturday before the holiday, about 9 a.m. And I've written letters to the student and to their principal, mostly, in the elementary school, so it goes in their record book and stays with them. We've had a number of students volunteer to do other types of services as well. So we're always open to, we'll find something. I mean, and I've had, kids coming up just even filing papers for a couple of hours here and there just to get them some community service time, because that's important for the older kids.
Right. Well, maybe it's important that we send out to the high school. I mean, they're walking distance, especially to Woodburn. I think that's what you do on Friday.
And I think last year, a large number of high school students went over to Woodbrook and did some, basic maintenance around a lot of the veterans' grave markers.
Okay. So maybe we can do a shout out to the,
Yep.
if we continue doing that to help
Yep.
out. It's a lot of flags to put out.
Yep.
So thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to let you know, I think you've made Woburn just a better place to live.
Good.
You have both compassion and approachability, so I just think you're a great person.
Love my
So,
job, Ellen.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ronan?
I'm sorry, Dr. Wells. One other thing, Larry, for the public that's watching tonight and may not be aware of it, the flag burning operation you have behind your office, do you want to remind folks how they can go about disposing of American flags?
Sure. So, as you probably all are aware, the highest thing a Boy Scout can do is their Eagle Pledge or Eagle Project. So I've had three Eagle Projects volunteered to the Veterans Department. One person did some cabinetry and some doors and some bookcases within the office. And a couple of years ago, Mr. Chairs, Justin?
Chairs, yeah.
So Justin built a flag burning memorial. So it's outside the Veterans Office, right behind the girls softball field, up behind the senior center. It has a chain link fence around it, stone walkways, and there's a burn barrel in the middle. Of course, everyone knows the only way that you can probably dispose of an American flag is it must be burned. And there is basically a ceremony that goes along with that. So anyone and everyone is eligible. I usually take the flags into the office until I have enough to go out and burn them, but I burn them all year round.
There's a barrel at City Hall as well, right?
There's a old mailbox painted red, white, and blue at City Hall, and there is also, Chris, there's one which used to be here, and they moved it over to the Herald.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, and those are for the holding of a worn, old, used flag, and we empty those out as we need be, and then take them up and burn them.
Okay, so on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for your service in Vietnam, and thank you for your service to the city of Woburn and to the Woburn school system. So,
My pleasure.
thank you very much. Enjoy your retirement.
I am still working Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays until the mayor decides to replace me.
Okay.
But I'm not going anywhere, and if there's anything that the school department needs of me, please ask.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Welcome, Larry. See you around.
Okay. All right. Moving along to item B, technology update.
Sure. So tonight, Jen Judkins is here to provide a technology update. In the world of COVID, quite a few things have changed, but a lot of things have stayed the same. So just an opportunity to provide the committee with an update, not just of technology, but also the libraries as well.
Yes. All right, thanks for having me. And so I'm just going to frame our conversation in terms of 4 major project areas that I'd like to review with all of you and just update you. So one of them is in the area of our student information system, cybersecurity, the device hardware upgrades that we're doing, and as well as the libraries. So first I wanted to make you and the community aware of a student information system because we are going to be making a significant change. So a student information system is really probably, I think, fair to say the most critical piece of software that we use in the school system because it houses all of the data related to student and staff, as well as, whether we're talking about grades, their emergency contact information, all of the state reporting information. This is the system that communicates with the state. So it serves a very critical function. And then also the parent portals that parents use to access their student information are all rooted in this system. And it also is where the teachers go to enter their grades. So it touches many stakeholders in our school community and plays a very important function. It also integrates with, ideally, it should be integrating well with other applications that we rely heavily on. For example, our nursing software and the software that we use for our food service program and our, our special education programs. These pieces of software rely on data that comes out of this system to sort of populate on a nightly basis so that we're always up to date in all of our systems simultaneously. And so that brings us to sort of like the reason why we're looking at making a change like this, because this is not a change that we make lightly. It's a very significant project and not one that I particularly wanted to take on, but the need was just too difficult to avoid the problems that were very real. So we've had Redeker well over 20 years. It's a very long time for any piece of technology, as you know. And the problem with Redeker is it functions pretty well if you were a small private school with one building and kind of a single location. But where we are 10 schools and also our out-of-district students, it has a very siloed structure, so it makes it very difficult to work at the district level and have the information flowing properly and quickly. The other problem is just the interface is very old. As soon as you go into it, it's not the easiest thing for people to navigate. And the most important thing that's really beginning to be a significant problem is its lack of ability to integrate, because it has a very proprietary system, and so newer systems, one of the things that users expect is that they allow communication to flow with the data more readily. And so that is probably the most significant issue, is that it has become more and more difficult for us to have the important information that is always kept up to date in the student information system communicating to all the pieces of software that we use on a daily basis. And so this has pushed us to a place where we decided that we needed to form a committee of stakeholders to evaluate software and look at a replacement for this. And so I'm just going to walk you through briefly the timeline so you know where we were and where we'll be going with this, because it is a pretty major project that takes quite a bit of time to implement. So last school year, we pulled together a committee of folks that were really very generous with their time and meeting with us to first go over a very comprehensive, essentially requirements document, like what are all the things we need this system to do, so that we could send that document out to the people that were the kind of vendors we were evaluating. And then we had them do live demos where we were watching the information. You know, they were giving a demonstration over a period of a couple hours for each of the pieces of software. And then we also had them recording videos of common functions so that it wasn't an evaluation of the quality of their sales team, but we were actually able to see, how do I enter a new student? How do we enter absences or grades, like side by side? And we also contacted references of other schools that were using this software to get a sense of how it was working with them out in the field. And so that moved us into like a contract and selection process. We settled on a choice of Powerschool, which is a very popular software that's used nationally. Redeker is a little bit more localized in its usage. And Powerschool offered solutions to the things that we had raised as our most critical need areas. So now that we've been underway this school year, our department has been focusing on extracting data from the existing, what we will be calling the legacy system, which is Readker, and migrating that content into the new system. As you can imagine, it's not just a matter of flipping a switch. There's a reason why this data doesn't communicate nicely, so the extraction and sort of like formatting of the data to move it is pretty time consuming. We are making good progress with that. We're in the process of configuring the system to make sure it complies with state requirements, because as I said, this is what's used to communicate actually nightly with the state and to do all of our required state reporting. So the imports are happening. We'll be planning to move 6 years worth of student data digitally. We don't want to move 23. As you can imagine, the further back you go, the messier this becomes. That doesn't mean that we lose it. We have paper copies and records of all of our students' CUME folders, but in terms of populating the system, we've made a decision based on multiple conversations in district and with other districts that have made this change, that 6 years, 4 to 6 years is a good place to kind of land. That allows us to have a full record of our high school students, including those that might not graduate in 4 years, so that we kind of have a little bit of wiggle room. So that's happening now, and that will continue into April, that configuration and the data imports. And then sort of simultaneously, we're just beginning the process now of training at the high school. They're going to be, we have a few designated folks in guidance and administration that will be they'll be attending some training on scheduling. Scheduling, as you can imagine, for a high school is probably the most complex out of all of our schools. And the computer does a lot of the work, but you have to, of course, train it so it understands all of the parameters to operate into. And so we're working on that. We're also looking at creating a training schedule. I'll talk more about that. And then, again, we'll be finalizing that data entry through the end of the school year, because as you can imagine, the imports that we do today are good for today, but we have kids coming and going and grades changing, and so we'll have to do everything we've done. We'll have to do at least one more time. Can't wait. And so it was so much fun. We want to do it again. And then finally, the actual implementation of this will happen for our staff when they return to school. However, we're doing a phased approach so that our heaviest users, which are our building administrative assistants, our administrators, our guidance department, those folks that are in the system the most, in our department, the technology department, will have access to it over the next 4 to 6 weeks or so. They'll begin to use it for some functions that are, towards next year, entering new kindergarten students, for example, that are coming in the fall. And so that will give our kind of power users a chance to get in there first, so that when we start the school year, and it will be bumpy because it will be new, and it's again relied on by so many people, we anticipate a lot of sort of questions and needs to come up. So if we can have some folks in the school have a little bit of exposure and begin to get familiar, it will hopefully smooth out that transition in the fall. We will do our state reporting, which is the end of year report will happen in our legacy system, because that's going to complete the year. And then any new state reports, which begin for us in October for the fall, will happen out of the new system. So Powerschool, one of the things that was attractive about it is they have a really comprehensive and well done PD Plus platform, which is a video tutorial library They have learning paths that are based on the role that you have. So there's an administrator learning path and a guidance learning path and a nurse learning path. And so those videos are all like laid out in a sequence. They have progress little bars, and we can assign these things and we can monitor folks' progress. And they also become a reference for people on demand at any time. So, as I said, you can progress track, so this will allow us to, ensure and identify where are some, folks that maybe need some additional support, that may be having trouble accessing this platform to get some training. And we're going to be working in conjunction with the curriculum department and the union to identify opportunities for professional development time so that we can, my anticipation is that most of this will happen at the first couple of days of return when we have our PD time for staff. This also meant that we had to convert our website because we were leaving Redeker. That company also happened to be the company that was hosting our website. So because we didn't want to do it all at once, because as I said to you, I anticipate the summer and fall being very intense around this project, I drafted a site. I basically moved all of the contents, worked with all of the folks that have content on the websites to ensure that we moved all of our content into a temporary holding cell, which is Google Sites. And if you go to woburnps.com or woburnpublicschools.com, you'll see this new website. It went live last night. And so that site is available and current, and our longer term plan is I will be meeting with some vendors to evaluate them migrating it just one step further into WordPress, which is a little bit more robust platform that's used for many websites. But we needed this in-between step because the biggest part of the process, honestly, is meeting with folks to find out what they feel like is important and make sure it's up to date. So that part is complete, the site is live, and then we'll be doing sort of a final brush up and converting to a WordPress site. I would anticipate that happening over the summer. Questions about that piece before I move on to cyber readiness?
Any questions about Ms. Chisholm?
On the new site that we have,
Yes.
is the same things will be available there that we do have now?
Yes, I would say that what we really tried to do is clean up the navigation with families in mind. We tried to create, buttons that were visual that immediately had sort of shortcuts to the most common things based on the data that we can easily look at to see why people are going to our website. And you could probably guess they want to know what the lunch is this week. They want to know what's happening if they're trying to register students or how to contact their nurse. Like, these are some of the more common things. And so we turn those things into buttons on the front page. We can change those buttons at any time because, at the beginning of the school year, bus information is top of mind, and so we'll be doing that. And then it's nice because many of the administrators use Smore for newsletters. They'll be able to just link those right there, kind of at the top where it's kind of latest news is, so not recreating something. And the calendar populates from Google Calendar, so we're trying to make it sort of low touch, and user-friendly. So we really thought quite a bit about navigation, worked with our family engagement liaison, met with a number of folks, met with Sue Tifo, and our, who's very skilled around visual stuff and helping me to think about design. So had a number of people that were helpful in providing feedback to try to make it as friendly as possible.
So like the school committee meetings and minutes and all that
Yes.
stuff will still be there?
Yeah, and Jean's very comfortable. She's already been working because this has been in development for some time. And so Jean's already very comfortable and was ready to go when we pulled the trigger last night. Yep.
So will there be 4 years of that there also? Or?
So it's actually, so it's kind of different. It's not tied in the same way. It just happens to be the same company. So we moved over, I forget how many years, at least 3, maybe 4. We'd have to see. But we have, we try not to keep stuff too old on the website. People aren't generally going to look for older stuff. They're looking for more current stuff. But there is a sort of like current sort of minutes, the current year, and then the prior years are listed. I can work with Jean and we can add more if you feel like, yeah, we had that conversation and, yeah. Okay?
Yep, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Crowley?
I just think this is great. I think I've learned over the years that having access to data, is key to education, especially when it translates to cost and funding and grants. and, all of those amazing things. So this is huge, huge undertaking, and congratulations. This is great.
Well, thank me when it goes off successfully.
Right, I'll thank you on July 2nd.
I appreciate the vote of confidence. This is a very big project,
Yes.
and I tell everyone I talk to, like, we're trying really hard, but it's going to be bumpy.
Yeah,
Because it
right.
just touches so many things. But I do think that once we sort of iron out the wrinkles, which I anticipate will happen, I do think that we're going to be all the better for it. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think, improving the way that we do business is certainly having more information at our fingertips. I think that will only improve our job as school committee members, being able to look at data and everything. So
Yeah, absolutely.
congratulations, and, you have my support.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Jen. How you doing?
Great,
I just,
thanks.
as I left the fire department about a month or so ago, we were using a program called Powerschool to implement some of our professional development classes and whatnot. And I think it looks a little familiar on you. So a staff person, if you go on, take a course at their leisure, it looks like,
Exactly.
complete the session or half the sessions and return to it later, and it's
Exactly.
still in there for them.
Right.
So
Yeah,
if
and then
you
it
could talk
serves as a
about that.
reference too,
Yeah.
when you forget it. So what's nice is, like a lot of sort of newer learning platforms, they honor the fact that people don't have an hour in one chunk. That topics are better divided in smaller pieces, both for feeling like you have a sense of accomplishment that you did these little pieces and they accumulate over time, but also because when you go searching for information, you don't have to cue yourself through the first 15 minutes of a video to find the little piece that you're looking for. So this is set up very much in the same way, and it was a very important driver for us about choosing this platform, because making sure that users have the ability to kind of help themselves and quickly find information is important. And having the ability to assign users and direct them to the pieces of training that are most suitable to their needs is also helpful, but they're not limited to that. So we can sort of assign modules, but they can also search and look at any of the ones that they're interested in.
Great. Sounds interesting. Thank you.
All set?
Yep.
Okay.
Just a couple things. So, I work with a system that I don't particularly love, and one of the reasons I don't particularly love it is it seems like you have to take 4 or 5 clicks to do literally any task. In terms of user interface, I'm also thinking here about older staff, maybe staff who aren't as comfortable with technology. To what extent was the ease of the user interface part of the decision-making process? How easy is it, especially for people who might not be comfortable with tech?
It's a great question, because there's always this sort of balance of more complexity, right? It equals more functionality, but sort of you always are balancing that with the challenge of being able to do so many things can be hard for a user. One of the things that I feel like was very informative for us as a committee making the decision was the videos that I asked for. So I have to say, I've actually met with tech directors since then to share our process, because I feel like we had a pretty good process. And one of the things that was
Have you
good.
met with mine?
What? Oh, yeah. We're being recorded. I know these people. So yeah, I think what was really helpful is what's very clear and understandable is some people have better sales teams. Some people have people that just do a better job of sort of laying it out. But when you're by yourself and that salesperson isn't telling you to click this and then that and do that, is it intuitive? And so that's why we went back to them and said, well, thanks for the live demo, but we also want you to record video showing, literally on the screen, you doing these common functions that a teacher would do, a secretary would have to do every day, the things that are being done over and over again. And so that was the piece that really sealed it for us, because the number of clicks that you would need to do between the two sort of leading pieces of software, that's where we were seeing a difference. So it was definitely, I wouldn't say that it would have trumped functionality, but I think when you write software well, it's intuitive. I shouldn't need training to be able to go up to it and kind of figure out where I probably need to be. And I feel like the interface for this is intuitive in that way, that you kind of get a sense of where you can go, and the searchability of it is, for those of us working at the district level, it's incredibly helpful, because right now, I have to literally go through and leave one school and go into another to look up a kid in another school, and it's just the time drag on that is ridiculous because it's very siloed in our current system. So this functions as a as it should, a database for a district, or it's very granular in its security settings. So if you work at the high school, that's all you're seeing. So the security piece on it and the ability to granularly control user access is really quite powerful, which is also very important.
So in terms of, you talked about the connections with other pieces of software. Does that include importing? So for example, I hate to make this sound like I'm just complaining about my system, but it took us forever to figure out, and it still doesn't work very well, how to import from Google Classroom. Mm-hmm. How possible is that with something like Powerschool or
that was a pretty that was probably the thing that put me over the edge when I was like, I realized I don't want to do this, and I'm asking for a lot of pain and suffering in committing to this project. But frankly, that was the non-starter. It just was not playing nice with others. And as we take on other pieces of software, having to create user accounts separately, so when a new kid comes, we're making an account here and there and there and there. It's the silliest thing, because if you do it right and you have the right software, I make an account one time, and then the software sort of nightly syncs with all these other players, right? And magically, the credentials populate. And that's what should happen, but was not happening well with the software that we had. So software, you're always somewhat limited by the receiver, right? Like the other piece of software. But again, I'm trying to be very thoughtful in decisions about software and thinking about things like that. Like always when I'm buying something, I'm like, well, I like it now, but someday I won't. So how do I get out of this? So you really have to think about how easy is it to sort of leave the software? How easy is it for that software to communicate with other pieces of software? And that all falls under the umbrella of interoperability, which is just a big word that just means that they play nicely with others. And so that was an important factor for us because it is so significant in making sure the data, Ellen, as you said, stays current, so that it's silly if our student information system has the parents' email and phone and address correct, but our special education system is mailing the IEP to the wrong address because theirs isn't updated. So this is the stuff that we really need to fix.
And just the last question, what's the cost differential between what we pay for Readiness right now?
They're actually almost the same. So it's a cost per student is how it's done. And I want to say it's in the $60,000 a year realm, and it's based on a cost per student. So it includes our out-of-district students, anyone that's sort of active in the system, regardless of the number of staff. It's a price point per student. So it wasn't actually a price increase. It really is, frankly, just the pain of moving it. And there is have I told you enough how much I don't want to do this? Yeah. But anyway, there is sort of a one-time cost of implementation that we were able to carry. Bob and I worked together to be able to carry that implementation cost, which is essentially almost like you're paying double 1 year, because you kind of have to pay for the old software that we continue to rely on and the new software and the cost of onboarding. So the cost is almost double this year because of that implementation, but once we leave the other software, it's really, I think it's actually a little less expensive, but it's fairly similar.
And
the costs for these are fairly similar.
The move to WordPress for the website, is that going to be an additional cost? I guess WordPress is not a huge cost. But
it's not, right? So it's really kind of it's really just more of a we're leaving Readiness, and by doing that, I just kind of needed to find another vendor, and I also didn't love the interface was as old as everything else they have, so I wasn't sad to see that go either. But WordPress is fairly well known. Again, I always think about exit strategy with software. They're very flexible platform. So I would anticipate that cost annually would be less than what we're paying for Readiness' website. We were paying around $8,000 a year for that, and I should be able to get us into a WordPress site for probably $3,000 or so a year. Yeah, it should be a pretty significant difference.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
All set? Okay. I guess you have
Moving on
part two.
to cyber readiness.
Yep.
You've been asking me about this, Dr. Wells.
I know.
And you're welcome. Well, we wanted to do this. We wanted to get on this topic sooner, but as you can imagine, COVID had us all quite busy. Yeah. And so this has been a priority for us that we've really hit hard this year. And so the categories that this sort of breaks down into is data security best practices, cyber awareness training, and cyber incidents response planning. So we've talked about this before, but just as a reminder, we are members of the Massachusetts Student Data Privacy Alliance. When we think about data security, one of the things that's really important is how are we using our data? Are we operating within the legal confines, but also do we have things in place in the event, God forbid, of something like a data breach on the part of a vendor? What are the protections that we have in place? What if we decide for whatever reason we're not comfortable with that vendor and how they handle our software? What does the contract allow? And what's really nice about our membership in the Mass Student Data Privacy Alliance is that we have a contract that covers not just the legal requirements, but more than that, that gives us some additional protections and safeguards around student data or data in general. So every piece of software that our students are allowed to log into are covered by these contracts. I also recently completed a 10-month Train the Trainer program. I know a lot more about data privacy than I ever wanted to, but it's also really interesting because, we want to make sure we're doing everything right and we have the trust of families. It was a really great program that was run by the Future Privacy Forum. It involved about 80 people across the U.S., mostly technology directors, attorneys, and state-level education agency folks. Only about 30 of us finished the whole program because it was so intense, and I did it. So it was good, but it was also really, really informative. And it also has me now as part of a cohort, so I'm able to get updates from them and participate in webinars monthly. And so it's also been a nice professional connection to have people that really know what they're doing if we have questions. As part of that process of taking that course, I drafted a data governance manual. It was sort of my culminating project, and so working on moving that from a draft to a fully implemented. But that really is, the timing of this is really nice because it dovetails with the student information system change that we're making. Because as you can imagine, one of the things we have to make a decision about when we move to a new information system, right, into Powerschool is who has access and what do they have access to, and how do we make those decisions? It really should be role-based security based on what do you need to do and what data do you need to have and what are you legally allowed to have, and really thinking about that. And so the data governance piece was around trying to think very carefully about those things and document that internally, and thinking about, how do we make those decisions? What does that look like? What are some additional responsibilities that people may have around training based on the types of data that they have access to, things like that. We are, as a part of our data security efforts, we are implementing two-factor authentication for those with sensitive access to data. So that starts with our central office staff, and then that will move into our administrative leadership folks. And what that will mean, and probably our nursing staff shortly after that. So what that will involve is that they will have, obviously they have their password, but two-factor authentication also requires typically a cell phone, or we can use a fob, where they get a code sent to their device when they're signing in to ensure that having a password isn't enough, but you have to have a password at a physical piece of something to be able to access an account. So that's considered an industry standard, and we want to implement that. It will also be something that we'll evaluate whether we can potentially roll out to all staff, because to be honest, it will significantly impact our cybersecurity insurance cost if we were to do that. So I think it's something we're going to want to investigate. We'll know more once we roll it out to the initial staff to see how it goes. And then we're also working with our network administrator. We have a network consultant that's working with us to do some server upgrades to ensure that the hardware and software that is running on our on-site is up to date and running the most current software, and we have a process for ensuring updates are happening regularly. That was funded through E-rate funding, which is a grant process that we use every year to help with infrastructure upgrade costs. It's about a savings of 60% when we're investing in things like this. We also are in the process of doing a cybersecurity awareness training program. We were awarded a grant from the state which allows us to roll out training, which our staff are in the process of completing. It is optional for staff, and we'll have to evaluate how many do it, but we have been getting some positive feedback from folks on, we've tried to explain that this isn't just for school, but also to help you to protect your own personal data, because people are always concerned about identity theft and other things. So it's essentially kind of like we talked about before about the PD Plus, like a self-paced little bits that are about 10-minute like increments that total over the course of like January to April, 2 hours total that we'd be looking for them to do. We get weekly updates on how people are doing. We've created some raffles and things to try to encourage participation. And in addition to that, we are also running a phishing campaign, which means that this same company that runs this training will, without notice and without consistency, send phishing emails, which are emails that look legitimate but have, unfortunately, not very positive purpose in trying to get you to click on things or give away information. And so those we've already had now 2 phishing campaigns, which then give us data about like how likely are our staff to fall for these things. And if they do accidentally click on the things, it provides sort of a teachable moment where it will tell them, like, here's what happened. Yeah, alarm bells go off in our department. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so it's really funny. And I have to say, I really, really appreciate the staff. I would say that increasingly I'm having people send emails to me or others on our team to say, I'm not sure about this email, what do you think? And so I just really appreciate that staff are trying to be careful and know that just because something looks legitimate, it does not mean that it is. And so people are starting to learn what are the look-fors in emails that they may be a little unsure about through this training. And then finally, in terms of cyber incident response, we hope that this never becomes a situation, but I think we have to prepare for the when rather than if kind of, mindset, because particularly right now with what's happening globally, there is definitely an increase in attacks around municipalities, which include K-12 school districts, from major players, not just kids having fun trying to get into things. We are definitely seeing, sponsored attacks at municipal groups and including school districts, and so we are trying to be prepared if something were to happen so that we have, like we train for anything else, a response that hopefully has worked out some of the kinks. So with our tech department staff, we are working on doing some, I've been putting together some tabletop scenarios which allow us to simulate kind of in a team, like, okay, you came in on Monday morning and this happened, and then 10 minutes later, this is new information that appeared. Now what do you do? Okay, well, this person's on vacation and unreachable. Now what do we do? And so just allows us to walk through those what ifs and really start to think about how do we improve our response and our positioning in the event of any of these incidents. And so I'm actually running a training for other tech directors on Friday with this tabletop piece, because it's really very helpful to go through a simulated experience, and there's some great resources out there through state and federal agencies that help give us some scripts to practice this with. And we are engaging with a number of state and federal agencies that offer incredible supports and resources to municipal agencies at completely free. I will be attending a conference that one's in May, I think, a cybersecurity summit in Washington. That is part of the MSISAC, which is again, direct to that, federal and municipal government agencies. And we're looking at drafting essentially a cyber response manual so we can kind of have like a playbook so that we know, okay, here's what's going on. There's been this has happened. Where do we go? Who do we need to contact? What do we do? So that's what we're working on this year. Oops. So any questions about the cyber piece before I move on?
Just a quick question.
Ms. Cormier.
The two-factor authentication, is that every time they log in? Is that every so often?
It's a great question. What's actually nice about it is it's not every time you log in. It's every time you log in on a new piece of hardware.
Okay.
So once you authenticate on a piece of hardware, you've already said, like, I trust this device. And then that will typically only come up, I want to say it's every 30 days on that device. And so it really isn't terribly annoying.
Sure.
I was concerned at first when we were trying it out that it would be like an every time thing, but it's not. It's just based on the hardware that you do the first time it goes in, and then it lasts for a month before it prompts you again.
Great. Yeah, I think this is great because we've obviously learned a lot in the last few years about certain vulnerabilities that there are, like Zoom bombing, all that other malarkey. So I don't want to make, we want to stay on top of these things, obviously, and you're clearly at the forefront of this. I appreciate that.
Tried. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions about cybersecurity? Good. Thank you for the update.
Sure. And then moving on to hardware upgrades. So we had, you may have already heard this, but we had some really great success in applying for and receiving ECF funding. So ECF is the Emergency Connectivity Fund. This was recent legislation that was the result of COVID that really, frankly, shone a light into, the fact that there were a lot of discrepancies in access to technology. It was really great because I was able to be involved in conversations with legislators very early on in the process through my involvement in other organizations across the state. That was really exciting to feel like you're talking about and advocating for something is so important. So it was really an honor, and I'm doing that again tomorrow. Actually, I have a 4-hour meeting with legislators around some of the, frankly, the hot topics in education, and I'm flying to Washington, D.C. to have in-person talks with them later in the school year. So it's really exciting to be able to advocate for what I know and see our needs that we have, and so this was really exciting to be able to take advantage of this money. We were able to, through this grant, get, for student devices alone, we had $336,000. That allowed us to replace over 1,200 devices. These are devices that were end of life that we were going to have to purchase, and so we were able to offset that cost. We also were able to purchase mobile devices for staff. It may surprise you to know that many of our staff still don't have mobile devices. This includes our nursing staff, guidance counselors, folks like that still had desktop machines, and so we are trying to make sure that all of our staff have a mobile device so that they can take it to a meeting. I mean, even forget working from home, but just the concept of being able to go down and have a meeting with your device is something that I think people expect to be able to do and should be able to do now. So we were able to purchase 185 staff devices. The $74,000 that we received offset the cost by, they allow a maximum of $400 per device for sort of like reimbursement. So that provided a significant offset on the cost of something that we were intending to do. We're also, in addition to the PC laptops for certain staff, we're continuing with our deployment of Chromebooks, teacher Chromebooks, which look almost exactly like this. They're a normal 14-inch laptop style Chromebook, and these are going to roll out to the Goodyear, Shamrock, and Malcolm White staff between now and the end of June before they leave. So these are all devices that are reaching end of life. We have a whole schedule. It makes it pretty clear about who gets what and when. And so these were up for refresh, and so we were able to purchase the teacher devices that they need with that funding. We also are able to and have been doing some additional upgrades around audio-visual. This continues to be a huge area of need in the district. We're still doing a lot of catch-up in this area. Projectors have an expected life of 10 to 12 years, and we have a lot of them that are older than that, entire buildings worth. So they're quite expensive to replace, and so we have a plan, and we're working with school administrators to try to make sure we're getting things kind of in a prioritized fashion. So the upgrades that we're able to do this year will be Student Activities Funds is funding the upgrades for the high school auditorium. This is a new projector and sound system for that space. I just met with the project manager, and that's planned for between now and the end of the school year. And then we're recabling we're redoing wiring for the Goodyear and putting in new whiteboards. These will work with their existing projectors, which are not too old yet, but the cabling is older, and so the quality of the picture, it will seem like they got a new projector. It's sort of like the difference between the SD video on your TV and HD video. It will make that much of a difference for them. So it's worth making that investment in cabling because it will get us a little bit more time out of those projectors, which are not too old yet. So that's actually happening tonight, and they were here yesterday. They're doing installs. It's like the projector fairies come overnight. The teachers are so excited this morning. And then we're going to be doing new laser projectors in the entire Malcolm White School. I just met with the staff today. They're pretty excited about that. And we're continuing with the work. Special education has been helping to support the funding of some of their classroom spaces to help us just get this moving a little faster because, as I said, we have more need than we have funding. So trying to find different pots of money and ways to try to keep things going as we can. And then any questions about hardware upgrades, and then we can move on to library?
Real quick, you mentioned the student activities funded,
Yes.
one of those.
Yes,
line
that
items?
funded the auditorium, the high school auditorium. Go ahead.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
student activities is not funding the
Oh,
auditorium.
so sorry.
It's a revolving account.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yes.
thank you. I'm so glad
That's
you were here
right.
to fix that.
That's
My
Student
bad.
activities is not involved with that.
Sorry.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Bob.
That's why Bob's here to correct me. Surprised I wasn't getting the look. I just wasn't looking at you, Bob. I'm so sorry.
You were getting a look.
Okay. I just didn't see it. I was here happy in my place. All
I
right.
was waiting for the right moment.
All right. Anything
Good.
else?
That's all right.
Okay. All right. So library programs and spaces. I think I mentioned to you folks last time we met. I really think it's an honor to help support our libraries. They mean a lot to me, and I think that these are incredibly underutilized spaces that need a little love. So we've been working together with the school librarians and doing some significant work around updating the collection. So that's meant a lot of books leaving and new books coming in, and also trying to label books in a way that make them kid-friendly and easy to find. We want to increase readership, and a big part of that is making the library space itself accessible to kids, much in the way when you go into a bookstore, you just beeline it to the cooking section, and no one needs to give you a chart of the Dewey Decimal numbers, nor should they. And so we're trying to do that in our library spaces. It is a very labor-intensive process, so it's been ongoing. I have a student helper that we've hired to do some work, and we are working on it, but we're making really great progress. And this also includes, we're going to be adding barcodes and digitizing our collection. We, believe it or not, all of our, except for the high school, all of the other libraries are cards in pockets. Remember those? Yeah. We're still using them. But we're working on it. So again, it's just a time-consuming project. So we've identified software that we reviewed and evaluated and purchased for that. The schools that we've prioritized for this work are our Title I schools and those that frankly had a lot of need around their library space. So Alta, Vesta, Malcolm White, and Goodyear have been our sort of first pass, as well as the Joyce and the Kennedy libraries are also. So those are all happening simultaneously. We've spent over $24,000 in books and continue to look at, and I've been working with finance and Title I funds to just try to make sure we're continuing to bolster our book purchasing sort of line items so that we can be sure that we're always thinking about refreshing our collection continuously as opposed to like an event in history, as it should not be. It should be kind of an ongoing thing. So having great support with that, really excited. And then, oh my gosh, I can't wait to show you this page. So I'm just going to take a moment of silence for what used to be the Alta Vesta Library. Okay, and now look at it. We redesigned this space, and it's incredible. You need to go see it. And I just love that I asked Linda to send me a picture of the library, and she happened to have just taken some shots of the kids using the space just as we had envisioned. The soft seating pieces and stuff, this was the intention, that kids would just find their happy place with the book. And so this is really exciting. So you might notice that there's new soft, colorful seating. There is carpeting on the floor that they did not have. We also removed some of the book shelving that was intruding in the space and have really cleaned up the shelving. Again, having lots of books on a shelf is not really what you want, because kids shouldn't be like trying to pry them out. They should be easy to sort of sort through and pull out. And frankly, if a library is doing its job, there shouldn't be that many books there, because they should be in children's homes. And so it's really exciting to see these spaces start to change. It will be a process over many years, but it's really exciting to see that start to happen. We are also working with the librarians. We're starting actually working with the innovation coaches to develop some more up-to-date curriculum specifically to address needs around digital literacy and online safety in our K-5 schools. So we're working on developing that curriculum, and that will run through our libraries. This will then go into the K-5 library time that we have in our schedule. And so we have been meeting and talking with the librarians who are absolutely in support of this, and the coaches are helping to develop this, and we'll be working with them to implement it, the end of this year and throughout next year. So that's exciting too. So I think that's it. That's what I got for you.
Any questions about the library? Ms. Crowley?
Okay, so I think this question, I'll probably be asked this question. So what was the process of what books to decide to buy for the libraries, and who did,
Yeah, so the librarians could answer that more, but I will tell you that they look at, and we will be able to do this better, Ellen, as we end up with having better data out of our libraries. One of the problems, as you can imagine, with having paper cards is that we don't have great data, and I love good data, and I can't make great decisions without it. So being able to see the circulation will make a huge difference on us being able to say where are the books that keep going. But as you can imagine, the librarians kind of know the ones that are sort of like the usual. Yeah. But then we also, this is really the important mission of a library, is we don't want to just make available the books that the kids are going to get whether they come to the library or not, but one of the core missions of the library is to really help kids to expand the scope of what they're reading and think about different genres or different authors, and we want to offer that. So there's been definitely an emphasis on, I will say, just based on the weeding that we had to do, the need areas that clearly rose to the surface are nonfiction, because nonfiction books, we should not have nonfiction books generally less than 5 or maybe 7 years old. But more than that, like I question whether it's accurate information in many cases. So the need to constantly refresh nonfiction is just an obvious, factor based on the nature of that information. And then graphic novels are definitely an area where our students are really interested. It really helps pull in reluctant readers. And so they've been increasing, the purchase of those types of books because they didn't have that many of them. And then the other area that we're really mindful of is the books that really help our students see themselves and the characters in our books. So we're really trying to be mindful of purchasing diverse books, and so that's another focus area.
Yeah. No, thank you very much.
Sure.
I figured, someone would ask us about that. What's the process through which we buy books? So I really appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll be able to answer that much more accurately with data, maybe next year.
Yes, because you can actually keep track of what books kids tend to check out.
Right.
And what are the high demand books.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
right,
that's
exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And what books aren't being checked out, but we know are really good, that we're just it's amazing when you put it on the shelf and feature it, how they just pick it up.
Right.
So all of those things will be, it's really important to make that shift to the digital, checkout and barcodes on our books so that we can know that.
And I remember you describing genreification, where kids will go to navigate their interests when they're at the library.
Right.
I want to read this kind of book, so I'm going to go to this section versus...
And that's how they're more likely to pick a different book or a different author than they would, because they're kind of in their zone, right? Like all the animal books are here. Like it's just, they can't wait. So it's I do think, I know the data definitely bears out that it absolutely increases circulation, and so this is why we're doing it.
We're giving up on Dewey.
Dewey,
All those years
Dewey,
learning.
Yeah,
I thought that led to leading a life of a higher plane of existence, all the years of learning the Dewey Decimal System. So I'm
There's
totally
some
disappointed.
librarians that hold on to that like it's the Constitution, I will tell you. But no, I wasn't sad to see that go, and I am very grateful. Our library staff has been incredibly flexible because I've really sort of been challenging them around some of the ways we've done things, and they've been very gracious and very willing to make changes because they see that they're going to benefit the students. So they've been really great.
I just think this is a key aspect of literacy too, the interest in books and curiosity in books and going to find them in the libraries. It's just very exciting.
It is, and I also want to change how we view our spaces, that libraries are not book warehouses. Libraries are places where we go to explore and experiment with new learning. That's what they are. And so if I'm going to learn about something new, I want the library space to support that, not just with books, but with digital resources, with physical things, right? All of that. And so, and my hope is that as we continue to do this work, that teachers will also see these spaces as, These are shared spaces for them to access when they're not in use with library classes. Because sometimes, I mean, you see that photo, it's just great to have a change of scenery for kids. Like, let's just go spend a little bit of time in the library. You know, it just can get old to be in the same room all the time. And so I want to make sure that these spaces are really seen as truly as shared learning spaces in our schools, because they can be and should be. But we need to set them up in a way that makes them easy for people who are not librarians to navigate. So that's what we're working on.
And it's really helpful to get your philosophy on running the libraries too. You know, it's what your larger vision is for the libraries too. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
All set?
Absolutely.
Mr. Lipset.
I mean, I'll echo a lot of what Ms. Crowley said in terms of seeing sort of the philosophy come to life here. You know, my heart kind of lit up when I saw the kids lying on benches enjoying books, and that's wonderful. And, you know, so I have this side of me that is the innovation-loving geek. I also have the side of me that's a cynical curmudgeon. And so the other reaction I had when I saw those two pictures were, where did all the books go?
Yep.
And so, I mean, I guess I'm asking you to assuage my fears a little bit.
It's fine.
In terms of, you know, we're buying a lot of new books, but there was a clear difference in those photos in terms of the number of books. I love, you know, the idea of making sure that we're really focusing on what our students are going to be looking for and what they're going to be reading. But then there's also that joy of like pulling the old dusty thing off the shelf and finding.
You might be
something
the only
amazing.
one with that feeling.
I hope I'm not the only one
He's
with
not.
that
But I can address the other things.
so I guess my to sort of pull all this into a question. You know, do we still have the ability for students? I mean, what kind of interlibrary loans do we have? What kind of abilities do we have for students to go outside of what is admittedly a small space in an elementary library? If there's a particular interest to go beyond that, yeah.
Okay, so several things. First of all, absolutely, admittedly, the number of books in the library has we've seen a significant decrease, and take full ownership of that. It was absolutely on purpose. It was the right thing to do. Those full shelves we were lying to ourselves. There were many books on the shelves that did not belong in the libraries. They were not appropriate in terms of accurate information. They were not interesting for kids, so they were just taking up space and frankly getting in the way of them seeing the really good stuff. And so thinning the shelves needed to happen because we were not, because we have limited library staff, we were not routinely weeding, which is again something you do all the time, not as a holiday event, right? It's supposed to be an ongoing process. It's very difficult when you have 2 librarians covering 6 libraries, right? 7 libraries. So it's very hard. And so we did do it more as an event where it felt and was very dramatic in these buildings because, frankly, we descended on those spaces with many people to just get the job done. And we needed to do that so we could see what do we really have that are actually books that we think are worthy of our kids. And so it wasn't until we could kind of see the cleared out shelves that we knew what the holes were to be filled. And I will be honest, it's going to take some time to sort of bring the collection up to the size I would like it to be. But I think we did the right thing because I think we would not have, first of all, it also makes no sense to go through the work and time of labeling for the genre. I mean, when I tell you like the time it takes to like cut a piece of duct tape and fit it to the spine and make another, type out a label and put it on, like for every single book, to do that to books that we know we don't want to keep. So what I tried to explain to people is you touch a book once, you pick it up and you make a decision. It's going to stay or it's going to go. And it's not about, oh my gosh, it's not just the book, right? So you can have a great copy of, you could have a Charlotte's Web edition that's 15 years old. The problem is the cover art will dissuade a student from picking it up. And so it means that we have to replace that same title, but with updated cover art so that students, I mean, I know we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but they all do it, and so we just have to be there and know that. The other thing is we've made, curriculum has made significant investments in classroom libraries, as you know. So books in classroom libraries are quite significant and readily available. So there's that. So we had to weed because our collection wasn't really reflective of books that kids wanted to read or should be reading because of a number of things. The other thing is that as you can imagine, nonfiction, where we talked about needs to be replaced, the other thing is nonfiction by and large should be, in many cases, aside from very young children, we should start to encourage and equip students with the ability to use and access information on databases, because that is the most current information. And so by working with students and helping them to learn how to find and research information digitally, again, there would be fewer nonfiction books, but we are trying to increase those anyway, just because there were so many that were outdated that we've tried to replace. So in addition to all of those things, we're also thinking about, like, what is the purpose of the library? Again, not just books, because they can get books at the public library, they can get books in their classroom library, but what are the books, and what does the environment of the library look like, so that it sort of fills in other gaps, and right, like when we think about libraries, developing love of reading is top of mind, right? So how do we make sure there are books there that allow for that? And so I do think that we had to, it is somewhat of a painful process to go in. I was just at the Goodyear today, and I was like, gosh, there's really not that many books on the shelves. But I know there were more before when we started the school year, and that tells me they're in kids' homes, which also is a win, right? Like, so that's the other thing to think about it, is having them on the shelf is not necessarily a victory, because that means they're not with kids. So in terms of like other ways and things that they can access, we don't have the sophistication yet with the cataloging, because we're not there yet to be able to loan between libraries. I had been doing some really great, I had begun some work with the librarian, the head of libraries that's now not at the Woburn Public Library, in terms of trying to have like public library cards being able to be used right at the school, so that they could check out and request books that were delivered. So because of sort of changes in leadership there, we're kind of moving ahead independently from that, because that didn't kind of come to pass. But that's not to say that we can't revisit that, but we have so much work to do ourselves with cataloging our own books that I think we'll be busy. But I think it will take some time to build up the collections, but I would say that we've gotten really great support financially, like around Title I funds, and looking to expand the library budget moving forward, to make sure that we are populating these spaces with high quality books, and also thinking about like what are text sets that teachers might want to have because of different units that they teach and things like that. I mean, these are all the things we're talking about, but it will be, it will take some time to do it.
Also, you mentioned the challenges of having 2 librarians covering 7 libraries. We're approaching budget season. Has a discussion been had about potentially adding any library positions?
Well, what I will say is I will come to you about that, but not this year. So if I can reserve the right to come back to you next year.
By all means.
I really think that we have some work to do to sort of get things more ready. So that when we bring another elementary librarian on board, which I do think we need, then we would be in a better position anyway to use that person effectively. So it was on my mind, but I'm going to put a pin in it and come back. I have a feeling that's going to be a next year ask, when we're going to be in a better place for some of these spaces anyway. But yes, I do think that we want to give that some serious consideration. But what I want to try to do is help you and others to see what a library can and should be. Because if we look at some of the libraries, people are going to be like, oh, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. But I think if we start to show what these libraries can be, these vibrant spaces in our schools, then I think it will be easier to come to you and have your support in that. So that's why, not this year, but next year.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Susan.
Just a question, because I know somebody's going to ask. The library books that were taken out.
Yep.
Do we catalog those, or do we keep a list of those?
So you may recall we had a school committee policy around this.
Right.
So they are, I don't have titles listed. I will be able to do that once we have things digitized, but honestly, it would have taken forever.
Yeah, I didn't
so
know
we
if that would
didn't
be
do
something
that.
At each school, that if kids wanted them, they could take them?
Yeah, so actually what they did do is they did put books out, before we send them. Not all of them, because again, some of them you wouldn't want, the careers that women could have in the 70s. So some of these books we purposefully didn't make available to kids out of, that was a purposeful decision. But there were many books that, maybe were a little tired, maybe didn't have great cover art, but were otherwise good books. And so we put them out both for kids and for teachers. So in those schools. So that happened where the kids were invited to come down and look. Teachers were also, and so we were able to get some books. We certainly wanted to repurpose what we could before we, moved on to kind of recycling or donating to nonprofits. So, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Well, I want to thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
Thank you about the library update. I have been talking to the head of the library, the Woburn Public Library. She's going to come before at some point in the spring and tell us about her plans. And I think it's great that you're not trying to recreate something that we already have in Woburn, the Woburn Public Library.
We're
that
so
was great.
lucky for that resource. Yeah.
And always encourage our students to get their Woburn Public Library card.
Yeah. Very good. All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Good luck with those politicians.
Okay, so I am hoping that this will be the last COVID-19 update ever.
Burned it.
So we have the superintendent going to just give.
Yeah, so I'm going to, decidedly low-tech. And it's almost 2 years to the day. Friday, March 13th is when we made the decision to close down for 2 weeks, if you remember. And I think we've learned a lot over the past, it seems like a lot longer, but just 2 years. And so that being said, I want to take an opportunity to thank everybody, all stakeholders in the Woburn Public Schools. I use the terms flexibility, patience, and kindness quite a bit as we navigated through a pandemic together. And the staff, all staff, have been amazing. I would tell you that none of this has been easy. I think all of the teachers, the nurses, the secretary, everybody is. People are tired, and admittedly so. And but we did it, and and I'm really, really proud of how the Woburn Public Schools handled itself. With the support of the city, the school committee. Again, I think it's a tribute to the city of Woburn, how well we've handled a global pandemic. And so, that being said, as it relates to COVID-19 update, we did return on February 28th, right after the February break, with mask optional. And I think that first week, it was probably about a 70%, 70-30. So 70% were not wearing masks, 30% masks. I think the percentage is closer to 80-20 or 90-10 at this point, having walked through schools anecdotally. I will say that we have not seen any instances of people being treated any differently because of their choices. And I think that reflects on the leadership at each school and the teachers and the conversations that are being had at home and in classrooms, and the tolerance that people have for each other speaks volumes. And so that has not been an issue. As it relates to numbers, in the city of Woburn, I think the percent is either at or below 3% positivity rate. That was as of last Friday. And in the school district, right now, we have 2 cases over the last 7 days. And so we haven't seen and I understood and I respect, the post-vacation question. And I think that did lead to some people wearing masks upon return. And again, by choice. And so, but over the last 7 days, we have 2 cases, and so this is not an all-time low, because last June, I remember saying we had 0 cases, and that was really, really nice. But it's a tribute, as I said, to the community. I also do want to thank the principals, because, and I reflect on a lot of the school-based decisions, each school is slightly different. And so, as an example, at the Harold Wyman, Miss Maloney runs, I think it's 6 lunches. She calls it the all-day buffet. But her schedule has to then, with specialists, has to work around that lunch schedule. At the Goodyear, the gymnasium is the cafeteria. And so, Mr. Casares has had to navigate that. And so each school has to handle it slightly differently, and they've done so. And so there's extra tables at the high school, as an example, so people can spread out, and the use of outdoor seating. So it really has been a team effort, and as Dr. Wells said, I hope this is my last COVID update. Mr. Morenin used the word earlier. I hope we don't pivot anywhere but towards the positive. I will say that having walked through schools over the past 2 weeks, it's just so nice to see faces and people smile, and kids are, I'm hearing stories about how, particularly elementary kids will say to teachers, like, geez, I didn't know you had a beard.
I got that.
Yes. And so those kinds of, the secretaries are able to see kids, their faces. If you think about it, our second graders really have not had a normal experience. So now that they're entering into school for the first time, in a more new normal. And so hopefully we sustain it. Again, I'm not a medical professional, but it feels like all signs are pointing in the right direction. So as the weather gets nicer, people will be outside more, windows are open, the HEPA filters are going, and so, again, we're 2 years, it's been a long 2 years, and so thank you to everybody for their support. So here we are.
Okay, any questions for the superintendent? Ms. Chisholm?
Is there any timeline for taking down the barricades around the cafeteria?
Yes, thank you for asking. So, yes, and I don't know if it's a time. What I asked the principals to do is not change anything coming right in after the vacation. I met with the elementary principals last Friday, and I think that we're waiting this week as well, just because we don't want to undo things and then have to put them back in. One of the biggest things, really, the petitions, that's very noticeable.
Right.
One of the things that we talked about was pedagogy, and in other words, at the elementary level, oftentimes you have circle on the rug.
Right.
We haven't done that, so let's start thinking about getting back there.
Yeah.
People are in rows. We know that it's not best practice, and so the conversation is happening to start moving in that direction. But being respectful also of people's comfort level with that. Exactly. So the teachers need to be comfortable with those changes too. So, I think there'll be some movement on that in the very near future. So that's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Morenin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Superintendent Crowley, kudos to all your whole team for 2 years of this. But along with Mrs. Chisholm's point, I know there's been some issues with schools, entrance and exiting, traffic jams and all that. Not the normal, what do we pick up? We had to close off doors and use certain entrances. Again, I'm sure you've got that on your radar, each principal, play it by ear, whatever you want to use for terminology to work through those. I know, you're limited to going in certain doors during the COVID sessions. Now, can we start coming in door B again? Can we spread those kids out as they enter the building to alleviate some of the traffic in the streets, around that building? So again, moving forward, hopefully those things will occur as well. So.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So Mr. Nelson at the Kennedy, who's been there for quite a while, the way he described it, the buses would always drop off in the front of the school and create traffic jam and so forth. But because of COVID, he said, you pull around the back. That's alleviated the whole, so he said, it took a pandemic to figure out something that easy. So to your point, there's different ways that we can access points and so forth.
All set, Mr. Morenin?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kissel?
And speaking of buses, when we voted to go maskless or optional as of the 28th, the rule was because of federal guidelines, busing and nursing officer, health officers, and then a few days later, I think they changed that. Is that what it was? So.
Yeah, of course.
Right at the moment, did it?
Yeah, so
It's Sunday.
No,
Yeah.
it was actually the Friday night of vacation week when that was changed.
And we couldn't understand why we couldn't pivot and give the answer right, so Monday morning, everybody.
Monday morning, you know,
Right.
so to your question, we adopted that on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So we just needed to make sure that, in my mind's eye, that families knew what the plan was, so they could make a decision for their child predicated on
Is
what
that just
our plan
buses, or was it nurse's office?
Nurses' office are still masked. So,
Okay, that's it.
and-
They probably should be.
yeah,
It's probably not a bad
it's yeah. So at the Reeves today, I happened to be there, and if a few kids were trickling in towards the nurse without a mask, and they're nice. Hey, here you go, and the kids are great.
We got plenty
So
leftovers, right?
they put on a mask, and so that's still the practice in our.
We still have plenty left over.
Tens of thousands.
I think we should.
Panic paid off.
More Christmas gifts, get ready. Stocking stuffers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Flu season next year.
Anybody else have any questions for the superintendent? Okay, well, thank you, and
Sure.
like I said, hopefully never to be heard from about COVID-19 again. Thank you. Okay, next up,
Sure.
FY23 budget
Yeah,
over.
so obviously, we've been working with the principals and department heads on FY23, and I thought it might be helpful to have the committee just hear from Assistant Superintendent Alta on our timeline. This isn't the budget. This is just the process and the timeline. I would, I want to lower the expectation right here. Mr. Alcanada.
Sure, great. Thank you, Jen. So, as Dr. Crowley said, we have been working on the budget for some time. We began, we released our budget packets to the principals and department heads in mid-December 2021. And this is essentially the same process that we instituted last year. So it has not been any significant difference. This gives the principals and department heads an opportunity to go through the budget packets, make any special requests for personnel, line item increases, or any other type of spending that we should know. That's returned to me in mid-January. It was returned to me in mid-January. At that point, we began scheduling budget meetings beginning in late January and continuing through February. This is our opportunity to sit down face-to-face with all the principals, department heads, and go through their requests, and so that I can understand it that much more, so I can advocate for them at the Finance Committee and at the school committee. So this is always very helpful in the process. And then really the budget construction begins essentially when we get the budget requests back. We begin to what I call stitch the budget together. And that will continue through next week. And as I say, beyond, because we're never really done constructing the budget until you take the final vote, because there's always last minute changes or new information that occurs. So what we'll do is the Finance Committee, beginning next week and over the next 3 weeks, will begin to review the budget. They have scheduled meetings on the 14th, the 23rd, and the 28th. I've spoke with Ms. Chisholm, and we're not going to go through every single line of the budget. We're going to hit the major points, the major sections of the budget that obviously the Finance Committee can review. Obviously, the Finance Committee will answer any questions that they have. We'll go through any part of the budget, but we'll present the major sections. On March 30th, I am expecting to present the budget to the school committee for the first time. And then at this point, based on your schedule, we'll have March 30th, April 12th, and April 27th to look at the budget here at the school committee level. On March 30th, no later than April 12th, but I would prefer March 30th at that point that you'll vote to schedule a public hearing on April 27th. And then after April 27th, assuming that the school committee votes in favor of the fiscal year budget, we'll make any last-minute changes and transmit that to the mayor on Monday, May 2nd. So again, that is the process and timeline that we essentially used last year. Any questions on that timeline or process?
So just to clarify, because I know Ms. Chisholm has scheduled some times, and I think you're doing them at 9 o'clock, Ms. Chisholm?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Conley can only do 9.
Okay. So, I think last year we tried to do it a little later. So we probably will have more discussion at the full committee than we did last year, because I think last year we did most of the discussion as a committee as a whole at the finance thing. So just make people aware, because I know lots of us can't be there at 9, so.
We could also, at the finance meeting, to make sure that everybody gets what we're getting.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, we can bring them
Right.
forward, or you
And
can
it's-
submit them that way.
And plus, you're not going to have the full budget anyways.
Right,
'Cause-
right.
So what I would ask from the administration is a cheat sheet, so to speak, of new addition, anything that's really changing radically could be given to the committee ahead of time. Because what I'd like to do is on the 30th is, once we get the budget, to figure out what the committee or who the committee would like to have before them. And that will probably be driven by what we see in changes in the budget. Because we're obviously want to have some department heads as people come forward based on what the subcommittee did and what you're proposing for new additions and so forth. So if we could get, as soon as possible, sort of a cheat sheet of what you're looking to change in the budget.
Absolutely. Sure. It's doable. Okay. So some of the challenges that we'll be looking at as a group, as you can see here, is the responding to the increasing number of English language students with additional EL teachers and paraprofessionals. SPED students continue to rise, so there will likely be a request for increased SPED teachers and other professional support. Last year, we had right to the end an assistant principal at the Malcolm White, and it was cut. It's back again. So that's something that we're hoping that we can get into the budget this year. Ms. Judkins talked about technology, and we have had numerous conversations about maintaining the information technology infrastructure and replacing devices. She has created a tremendous virtual one-to-one environment in all of these structures, and it would be a shame not to continue to fund that and let those structures rot, if you will. And we're currently or shortly will be negotiating with 7 collective bargaining units, and that has an impact on the budget as well, because we'll bargain and budget in good faith. But sometimes when you have your bargaining contract and you have the contract and you know what the raise is going to be for that year, that budget year you're working on, obviously that's a little bit easier. The interventionists appear to have been working out very well at the elementary school, and the elementary principals have all asked to bring the interventionists back for one more year. So once again, that is something that we're going to try to do. And as you know, we created a number of positions through ESSER grants last year. And as we said last year at that time, this year and next year, we'll begin to move those positions into the budget. The majority, hopefully, this year, and then in FY24, the final positions. So that will be obviously a challenge as well. So those are some of the highlights. There certainly will be other challenges as we go along, but I think those are some of the major matters that we're dealing with, and that ultimately decisions will have to be made on.
Any questions about the timeline, our plans? I do want to say I'm hoping to have by the 30th sort of a goal from the mayor about what we're targeting. So
Which 30th?
Huh?
What month?
March 30th, April 30th?
No, I'm saying, just like,
So,
Yeah.
just the 30th.
if I may, Mr. Alcanada and I have met, we meet with the mayor
Yeah.
weekly.
So I think we'll have a firm thing at that point.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
the target if I, 3.75
Right.
would be
Yep.
where I'm right now.
No, I'm just kidding.
So,
Just kidding.
but that's,
Get ready.
Kidding. Just
You get
gearing
ready,
up.
Alan?
Just gearing
So-
up. I'm
Yep.
just kidding though.
but again, you know, we'll work through the process.
Right.
You know, and candidly, so Mr. Alcanada gave you some of the challenges.
Yeah.
There's other positions that are asked for that, you know, you'll see, and so, and then
Yep.
decisions have to kind of be
I
made.
think the goal is to have, you know, a sort of a line that the mayor feels comfortable with. We try to work towards that, and then we know if there's something that can't fit within that line, then we better be prepared to defend it. So I hope, you know, the subcommittee will work towards that 3.75.
I'm not going to be here for the March 14th meeting, so if you wanted to, if I was, what was holding it back, if you wanted to make it later in the day for other people to be able to make it, that might be an option.
Let me know if you're available, then
I'll have to look at my.
yeah, I know,
okay.
that's why I say,
Okay, and you can look at yours. Okay, thank you. All right, so we look forward to this budget round, and hopefully things will go smoothly, and we'll be able to move the system forward. Hashtag move Woburn school system forward. Mike, is that the slogan you're using this year?
Hashtag it's a Woburn thing.
Yeah.
Anyone works. Show us the money.
All right, thank you, Mr. Panada, thank you, Superintendent. Okay, we're going to move on to subcommittee reports. Finance Subcommittee, Ms. Chisholm.
We did meet on March 2nd at 9 a.m. here at the George Conference Room. In attendance was Superintendent Dr. Matt Crowley, Assistant Superintendents Michael Baldessari and Bob Alfanado, Patty McKinnon, and school committee members Chris Kissel and myself. Questions were again submitted previously and answered in email back to us, and those are on file with my minutes. But we did have further discussions on catering services for parents' meetings, and we're going to have to follow up on that one, and the adjustment that's going to be needed for the nurses' salaries. We had warrant 1 was for $2,620,018.12. Warrant 2 was for $245,823.56. Warrant 3 was for $302,987.91. And warrant 4 was for $5,418.23. So we need a motion on those.
I have a motion to approve the list of bills.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the balance account reviewed and found to be in order. There's a couple that are concerned, but, you know, we'll be able to get there, no balance out there. We did have adjustments.
I'll make a motion. Do you have a
Oh, yeah.
motion? I have a motion to approve the balance of accounts.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And we did have some adjustments. One was from the EBT grant for $6,140 to offset some salaries. The second was the school committee line for $2,220 went to the expense line for audio and visual, and from our school committee line, $802.75 went to the business expense. That was for the check stock that was on our budget. And third was from the CSHS grant for $670. It went to the nurses line. It was for audio leads that were calibrated. And we approved a request for $10,000 for ongoing legal fees. And then Assistant Superintendent Michael Baldessari informed the committee that the district received a grant for $195,000. The grant will be used for behavioral counselors at the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA, and we spend $65,000 a year for 3 years. I don't know if there's anything we want to add to that, or?
Just thank you. It was actually awarded on January 13th. I'd hoped the committee had the opportunity to know that sooner. We do have $52,000 going for direct counseling services to kids, social emotional learning activities, and also professional development for staff who are working with kids. There's a lot of college students there. We have a clinical supervisor who is going to be providing oversight, a program coordinator, so to speak. And we also have $3,000 in the grant for to do a safe and supportive schools assessment, to assemble a team to do that. There's another $4,000 for supplies and materials for the club and the Y to participate. And one of the reasons that we got this is because we got the $500,000 for the 21st Century Grant. And because we have this partnership, we also have additional opportunities that are going to come available this summer that I hope to be able to tell you about in the future. So thank you, Pat, for allowing me the opportunity to talk about it.
And then we just discussed the dates for the meeting for the budget, and the meeting adjourned at 9:25.
And so, Mr. Alcanada, the city council always likes the grants that we get, so if you could maintain a separate list for our presentation to the council.
Sure.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, okay, good. Thank you. Any questions for finance? Okay, moving on. Communication Subcommittee, Mr. Lipset.
We have not met. We hope to do so soon.
Okay, thank you. Curriculum and Data Trends Subcommittee. I'm trying to remember, Mr. Moran, that's right, I knew that.
We have not worked, Mr. Chairman. We will get in touch with Ms. Young and schedule a meeting shortly.
Okay, thank you very much. Personnel Subcommittee, Ms. Comia.
Yes, we met on Friday, March 4th, here at the Joyce, in attendance for myself, Dr. Crowley, Dr. Baldessari, Courtney Young, Marissa Boyajian, Patty McKinnon, and Ms. Chisholm joined us remotely. We started at 8:10 a.m. We discussed the elementary principal search. Dr. Linda Riley had accepted the verbal offer for the Alta Vesta principal position as of Friday morning. And at that time also, the finalist for the Linscott principal position had a walkthrough on the 3rd, Thursday, and final reference checks were going to happen. Dr. Crowley, and where are we with that?
Yeah, so I'll wait for you to finish. And then
So that was to be continued. Marissa Boyajian endorsed the process that they went through with Courtney Young, which included collaboration with India Barros, the coordinator for equity, diversion, and inclusion at the SEAM Collaborative. There were new postings as of Friday morning. A BCBA had resigned effective immediately on the 3rd, and that was posted the same day. And we are looking for an HR assistant in place of Jake Donovan, who has taken another position. Currently, he does more finance HR, but it's going to lean more towards HR, and there is a transition plan in place. Dr. Crowley did mention Mayor Galvin had the 3.75 increase in the budget. We wanted to make sure we keep that in mind regarding new position requests, and he noted that there are many requests for SPED and EL departments. And we have so far been unable to fill the RBT positions, and we may use one BCBA in place of 2 RBTs. And we adjourned at 8:36 a.m.
Thank you. Okay, I think the superintendent, before I ask questions, I think the superintendent is going to update us.
Yeah, so allow me to to add on. First of all, this is all relative to principals in the Woburn Public Schools. At the high school, we did post on Friday. Ms. Callahan publicized that she's going to pursue other opportunities, and so I just want to thank her for her service to the Woburn Public Schools and wish her well. At the Linscott, we do have finalists, and we're right at the finish line with that. I'm unable to announce who that is, but we did have 2 finalists come on last Thursday, met with Mr. Alcanada, Dr. Baldessari, Ms. Young, and then I toured the schools, not plural, school, and had great visits. So I think we're close on the Linscott. And on the Alta Vesta, Dr. Linda Riley has been offered and accepted the permanent position as principal at the Alta Vesta. And I can tell you the staff are really, really happy. I happened to go up and talk to her in person, and well, she screamed, and so everybody knew. But then walking out of the Alta Vesta, I think because of her scream, teachers were yelling out the window to me, thank you, or go, like they're very happy. So anyway, so congratulations to Dr. Riley on that.
And I think 2 committee members, I know Ms. Chisholm you served, and Ms. Comia served. I don't know which one did which school, but thank you very much and for your service on that. Thank you. Okay, any questions for personnel? Okay. Resource and capital planning, Mr. Kissel.
Yes, we met on 3/2/22 at 9:30 a.m., Joyce Middle School Conference Room. Present was myself, Dr. Matt Crowley, Alan Crowley, Pat Chisholm, Dr. Baldessari, Patty McKinnon, Dave Dunkley, and Bob Alcanada. Topic of water in the schools based on the cities recently having higher than normal PFAS. We talked about how the schools are dealing with it. David Dunkley said bottled water is still being used as it was throughout COVID anyways, and testing has been ongoing in the city, and the numbers are in a safer place, according to what he was saying. So all water fountains have been closed anyways due to COVID, so they're just really working on that. The sign at the Malcolm White donated by Jennifer Baker Jones will be installed soon, and there was a letter going out. That's still happening to her?
Yep.
Okay. That's my follow-up. Thank you. And then Bob Alcanada spoke about the feasibility study for the schools and has a verbal report this evening. See Bob's notes.
Sure.
Oh, no one else has these, right?
Yes, we did have an extensive discussion on the feasibility study. I indicated to the committee that I had been in touch with Orazio De Luca, the city purchasing agent, who is going to be helping us with this. We talked about whether this should be an RFP, an IFB, invitation for bid, IFB versus a request for proposal, RFP. We talked about the need to, the 4 scopes of service, the need to have those comprehensively written so that we get good bid documents back. Perhaps having alternate options where the bidder may choose, we may have them list the four scopes of service, the pricing for each one, so that we are sure that we can afford all of it, so that if the price comes in over than what we've got, then we'd have to throw all the bids out. Where if scope of service 1, 2, and 3 come within our budget, then we could do those 3 and leave the 4th out. And then Mr. DeLuca has made some good points in terms of having a defined period of study so that we could get the study done, in whatever it takes, 2 or 3 months, rather than giving an open-ended commitment to a vendor. And we all agreed that to do the assessments that we're asking about would probably be best done over the summer months when there are no students and faculty and staff are minimal. And those schools that do have summer programming, we could schedule them to be the last in the assessment. So I think we had a good conversation.
Yep, very
and we
good.
do have some questions that need to continue to be answered, and we'll be working with the purchasing agent to get those squared away.
So the resources obviously will keep everyone up to date on that
Absolutely.
the process going forward. All right, past vandalism in the Woburn High School bathrooms was, according to David Dunkley, was probably prompted by TikTok videos, and they have shut 1 or 2 bathrooms that were off the beaten path and not easily seen by staff. But any damage, according to David Dunkley, any damage was taken care of by the vendors that supplied the tissues and napkin holders and things. They just replaced them, and there was no cost. Barrels were tipped over. He said basically basic things, and so that's the resources side of it.
Okay.
All right. The last piece is a tiny bit involved, so bear with me. It's the naming of a space at the Linscott for former principal Catherine McKillop. It's supposed to be a surprise, but it's a public record, so obviously I have to say all the names. So the family would like to try to, keep it as quiet as possible. Who was an employee in the Woburn schools for over 40 years as a teacher, a librarian, and then principal for 20 years at the Linscott. The family requested the library, but since that was already named, Mr. Wells, the principal up there, suggested a book room, former computer lab. The family was good with that and will provide any plaque to be hung. Trying to keep it a surprise from Ms. McKillop. See letter attached, which I will read briefly. It's from Ernie Wells, the principal up there, and some notes from staff that worked with her. We need a vote based on current policy, FF, and I don't think I got it to everyone, but it is out there. It's called naming of facilities. Pretty basic. It says, at the end of the day, the committee also feels it is appropriate to name schools for physical locations, geographical areas, distinguished local, state, and national leaders whose name will lend dignity and stature to the school. A certificate, significant or pertinent events for considerations for many school facilities must first be presented to the school committee, but it says, we're not looking for popularity, no political pressures, things like that. The family approached, asked, there is a space available. She was an employee for 40 years in the system, 20 as a principal. So as a subcommittee, we kind of talked about it, that it would seem appropriate. The letter from Ernie and his bit of his staff is, she held the school to high standards, high expectations, and accountability, which is still part of our school improvement plan of today. Ms. McKillop was a no-nonsense, no-excuses administrator, and she expected the same from her staff. I'll just summarize. Kathy's no-nonsense attitude was so obviously motivated by her love for the children, she held them to the highest form of accountability. Kathy was a principal led by example and easily earned respect. She held everyone around her to the highest of standards, and she pushed all in her care to be the best they could be each and every day. Jumping ahead, Ms. McKillop will always be the Linscott LBL, which is the Linscott boss lady. a title bestowed upon Kathy with respect and endearment. Kathy has remained an important part of the Linscott community. She now holds the much-deserved title of LRL, Linscott Retired Lady, a title Kathy has truly earned. So there is a nice letter here. I can make copies if anyone would like to see it, but moving ahead on my notes,
How about if we you want to do the motion now?
it's right here, it's coming up.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you had that in your
Oh,
notes.
yeah. A May 10th deadline is requested by the family since that will be her 80th birthday. That's not a surprise. She knows about her 80th birthday. So, do I have a motion to approve the naming of the book room at the Linscott in honor of Catherine McKillop?
I think I asked if, do you
I
have,
know.
do we have a motion to approve the naming? Do we have a second? I just want to say that I had the distinction of being on the committee when she was appointed as the principal. Actually, at that point, the committee actually voted to appoint them. So that tells you how long ago. This is, I'm reliving the past because I served with Mr. Cannon, too, on the committee at that time. So,
On the motion, I was just wondering if we should put the motion on maybe at a time when the family could come, or are you ready to go on tonight?
I think she
they're
did.
waiting to-
Yeah, the niece wanted me to
okay.
just
All
reach
right.
out. They'd like to do it, not on May 10th,
Yeah.
of course, but sometime prior to
Right.
that, prior to her
Yeah.
birthday.
So
And
we
I think
could
we
have
can-
something as a committee at a
Right.
later time, this is just
Right,
to get
yeah.
approved, okay.
yeah, I think once we get, is when they finalize a date, we can
Yeah.
get a proclamation
Okay.
from the mayor
Yeah.
and something from the
Oh.
committee.
I think, like I said, the family sounded like they would provide the plaque, and the school, I'm assuming, would maybe put together
Maybe
something.
do it during the day when
Yep.
you take
Yeah.
something.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
I'm in favor of it.
All those in
Anyway.
favor?
Okay, sorry. Aye.
Aye. We
Okay.
voted?
Yes.
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Okay, is that it?
Oh, yes.
I wanted to thank your
Adjourned
subcommittee.
at 10:17.
Subcommittee, they worked on the lights at the Harold Wyman, and I think they've finally reached an equilibrium with the neighborhood.
Excellent.
We'll see if it
You did
continues. No, it wasn't me.
So I just want to say something to resources. The feasibility study is going to be, if the public is listening and they're interested in how we manage our assets and
Yeah.
how we're looking to improve them, this feasibility study is going to give us sort of that roadmap.
Mhm.
So, very exciting, and I
Yeah.
think Mr. Kissel did a great job at bringing this to resources, and Ms. Falconata, so it's going to be very exciting.
Mhm.
And I see that the city council is also very interested in it as well. So this will be a
Yep.
huge
So,
thing for
yep.
the city of Woburn.
Yep, so keep us informed about the progress of that, because we don't want that to get stalled. Okay. Student Services and Achievement Subcommittee.
We are meeting this Thursday.
Okay. There is, I saw, we got from MASC, there's some new policies that came about student things, and I'll forward it to you.
Great.
They had updated some things based on law changes and so forth. So
Thank you,
might
Dr.
just look in
Wells.
it.
We will look
Okay.
at that in SSA.
Okay.
Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And I think that's it for subcommittee. I did want to announce that this is the unique period. We had a trade. Mr. Kissel and Mr. Lipset traded subcommittees for a player to be named later.
2 weeks too late.
You know,
I got off a curriculum, now I'm on personnel.
right, and Mr. Lipset's on
Good
curriculum.
moves.
And you're happy to be here, Chris.
I am.
And, it just had to do with work schedules and stuff. But I do think, the committee should look, going forward, I think the things that we have to think about is how to get people that want to be part of the school committee in the future, because most people hold jobs, and a lot of our meetings are done at times that are difficult for people that, have jobs that they have to be like 9 to 5 or whatever. So we should, think about that going forward and see if there's some way we can accommodate that. It doesn't have to be.
Dr. Wells, that is something that we did sort of begin to discuss at our first communication
Yeah.
subcommittee meeting, and I imagine that will be
Yeah.
part of the discussion.
Okay, great. Okay, correspondence. I do have two. I received one from Ms. Seitz via Mr. Lipset. She was asking about the principal situation, and I responded to that. And then I got one from Ms. Curran, who was inquiring about the superintendent's contract and evaluation, and we're working on that. So, any other correspondence? Did you have one? Yeah, I was going to.
Committee? Are you pointing?
I was pointing to you because I knew you had some. I didn't know Ms. Cormier, so I'll do her next, so.
Oh, we'll go ahead.
It may be the same thing.
I think It might be. Go ahead.
Okay.
The Woburn Community Education Foundation today awarded over $19,000 in grants to a number of our educators. They're listed there.
Or hold it up.
You want me to Vanna White it?
While you're talking?
Yes, come on over. A number of people, a number of our educators applied and were provided with these grants, a lot of STEM, wind blocks, various things that are not covered under our regular budget.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
just wanted to draw attention to that.
And I don't know if you want to comment.
Yeah, so just to build
Fire
off,
bottle?
Yes,
to build
please.
off of that, Ms. Cormier is a member of the Community Ed Foundation, so thank you for your service there. Maureen Willis really is instrumental in this grant process and does a great job coordinating the Ed Foundation. Also present today were Joe Crowley, who founding member of the Ed Foundation, and
Eric Skeffington.
Eric Skeffington was here
Nancy
today.
Whalen and Sue Ellen Holland.
Yeah. So it's a great group who support the Woburn Public Schools, and so thank you to the Woburn Ed Foundation, and the teachers are grateful. And I commented to the teachers today. It really was 2 years ago. That was the last public event we had, and so it's almost 2 years to the date when we took that picture, and it pops up in your memories or whatever, and so. It's kind of nice to be back, and we had a nice celebration this afternoon. Along the same line of grants, just a couple other grants to be aware of. Dr. Eric Conti and I have been working with Senator Friedman. I think I've mentioned this. And so there's a $300,000 earmark that's Burlington's going to act as the fiscal agent, but really it's surrounding, and we're working out the details, access to medical care or vaccinations to students that may or may not have the ability to get that, so they can enter school in a timely manner. It's a multi-year grant, so it's going to be something that we kind of think through, and the goal is to kind of make it sustainable, so it's not just something we do for the present. So that collaboration is underway. I also want to let you know that Representative Rich Haggerty's office reached out to me. The high school was awarded a $75,000 state grant to support the Innovation Pathways Advanced Manufacturing Program. So that's Kim Gustenhoven is spearheaded that Innovation Pathways. I think she came to present previously. But again, the $75,000 grant was awarded. And then you talked about it earlier, but I was going to mention the $65,000 grant for this year for the after-school behavioral mental health and the partnership with the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA. So, and Jen Judkins alluded to the connectivity grant for $336,000. So, we've been proactively looking to partner with state agencies.
Thank you for that.
Dr. Wells, just one more point about the Education Foundation. We do have the second Woburn Hall of Fame this year taking place. It will be May 21st of 2022 at the Hilton in Woburn. And you can purchase tickets online or by mail, and watch out in the Daily Times for a number of informational posts about the different people that are being honored this year.
And one of our former school committee members, Mr. Torres, is going to enter into the Hall of Fame, so the family will be very excited about that. So, okay, all right. Correspondence. I do want to mention the superintendent informed me that some of the groups are ready to begin negotiations, so I'll be reaching out to members. I know Mr. Kissel and Ms. Crowley are hard at work as a teacher's contract, but other members I'll be needing help with that. And then also, we're going to need a school committee representative when the high school principal position is being reviewed. Okay, future agenda items. I don't know if anybody has any. Send them to me or send them to the superintendent. Executive session. We did have listed discussion on pending litigation. Our lawyer has asked for that to be delayed. but I understand we do have some updates on the teachers' negotiations from Mr. Kissel and Ms. Crowley, so that will exclude Ms. Chisholm, but if we could have a roll call to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussion and collective bargaining.
Okay.
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Ms. Chisholm? Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Kissel?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Mr. Morenin?
Favor? Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes, okay, so we'll go into executive session